Hi, I'm Lorraine Sherry, and welcome to my podcast on sober living. And in today we have Derek Burney. Welcome, Derek.
Hi,
How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
So we're going to talk about you're sober. How many years?
7 years in November.
November.
That's last November, so seven and a bit years. People who are sober generally remember it to the day, 20th of November.
20th of November.
Yes.
It's ingrained in your mind.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So, when was your first drink?
I think that my first proper drink was probably around 1986. So I would have been at that stage 15, maybe 16. I wasn't a young starter. A lot of people would have got off the blocks a lot younger than me. I was never really particularly interested in it. But I fell in with a couple of guys who live not far from me, and the exact time is a little bit fuzzy. But I remember this guy's father had a barrel of homebrew in the shed. In those days, it was kind of a thing that people used to make their own beer, and it was a barrel of beer down in the back of the shed. And I think it was the two. They were two twins, and I think it was purely started as a dare. To drink a glass of this stuff, and I think they drank far more than I did. I might have only had a glass of it, but I got a taste and I didn't particularly like it, and the feeling kicked in a little bit later. I didn't particularly like it, but I ended up hanging around with these two, and through them I met another group, and in those days we were hanging around town. This was the beginnings of my punk phase. We were hanging around town, and there was a bunch of us used to go. There could be like 10, 12 of us. And I remember one day that they were getting a flagon of cider, which is 2 litres in a plastic bottle. At that time, it was £2.19 for 2 litres. And you wouldn't have got one of these things by yourself.
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, we were new to the drinking game, so you wouldn't drink. I certainly didn't know anybody who would have drank one of those by themselves. So I got one with a friend of mine. We went halves on one of these things. And I remember very little. It took us a while to finish it, but I do remember we were in this place where we used to get food, and I completely zoned out. That was the thing, and he had to say to me, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was going, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I don't really remember much about it, but that was it. That was my first drink, and the the people that I was hanging around with at that time were in there drinking flagons of cider. That's what they did. We go into town, we go to Stephen's Green, the park in Dublin, and we'd have our flagons of cider. So it went from me having half of one then to drinking a full one. And I had no tolerance. I would be absolutely bladdered. But when my mother realised that I had been drinking one time, which was after my Leaving Cert results, I think it was Leaving Cert or the Inter Cert, I'm not sure. She didn't really mind that much because I was. She said it was a once-off. In my mind, that was a validation. My father also was aware that I had the occasional 2 litre of cider, and he brought me to the pub one time when I was working with him as a decorator's mate, and he bought me a couple of pints. And again, this to me it seemed like a validation. But what I found was that. Drinking a 2 litre of cider kind of got you in with these people. Seemed a little bit silly.
The crowd you're with.
Yeah. They all drank. And you had to be, not that you had to be, but you felt you were kind of one of the boys. It was a complex thing in many ways. I don't think I really enjoyed it, but I did enjoy the camaraderie of it.
The social,
and also there was a kind of a certain amount of illegality about what we were doing. We were too young.
Too young, but also in public.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. I mean, we wouldn't be walking down the street drinking That came later. We would have been doing it in the park, and gradually kind of moving to pubs. There was a couple of pubs in Dublin that would serve you. Again, we'd have 1 or 2 pints, So it was generally at the weekends.
For me, at 15, we were in the pubs, but it was different, I think, for girls, because girls...
You looked older.
With makeup, and you looked older.
You looked older, yeah.
So we were in the pubs.
Yeah. Well, no, we didn't. Pubs weren't really a feature for a very long time with me. They just weren't. For the simple reason that pubs were expensive. We didn't have a lot of money. The idea of the flagons of cider was you got 2 litres of cider for, like I say, $2.19. Price was variable. And that was generally enough for you, you know. It
And
was.
just to ask about that social circle, was there music at it? Was it just drinking? Was there like drugs or smoking or?
Okay, so me and my friends were kind of in and out of each other's houses. We all lived at home. We would play our music there. And we generally didn't drink at home. It wasn't allowed for a start, but we just generally didn't do it. Like I say, I was in school. We used to save our drinking for the weekend, and then there was a couple of pubs. One of them is still there, the Flowing Tide in Abbey Street. They weren't particular about serving people who were underage. Now, we wouldn't have been massively underage at that stage, so we started to go there. That would have had a music going on there, and there was a couple of pubs in town that didn't mind serving punks as we were at that stage. It was the Foggy Jew was another one of them, Brussels to some extent, but generally we drank on the streets or in the parks. What we used to call knacker drinking in those days. That was usually what we did because pubs were expensive and they didn't usually let us in. Yeah, that came later.
So, how often a week were you meeting up?
In the early times, we only drank on a Saturday. Yeah, it was. I didn't drink on a Sunday for years and years and years.
Where do you think the drinking, like from the age of 18 up then, into your 20s, how did you approach drinking?
Well, it was very, very gradual. I was dating a girl for a while, and we used to meet up, and we would be drinking in. At that stage was a pub in town called Bartley Dunn's, which used to let people in that were kind of like alternative folks. We used to drink there. We'd go to parks and things like that. We would have drinks there. Again, this is still, within reasonable boundaries. We weren't doing it very often. But I think it was around that time I got a taste for it as such. When I finished school then, there was more drinking involved. And then I think at some point I started drinking at home.
Okay. Alone?
Oftentimes, watching TV and MTV or whatever. No, I wouldn't be drinking a lot. It was a few cans or a flagon of cider or whatever. I did do it. We used to. There was a lot of house parties in those days. There was a lot. Everybody had a house party, or everybody would have what we called a free house, free gaff. We'd go around there. We'd bring cans. We'd bring beer. But again, it was all kind of still. I didn't do a lot of it. I would drink a lot at the time, but I wouldn't do it very often. It was certainly once a week, maybe twice a week, but it was nothing special. But when I split up with this girl, now bear in mind this was my first serious relationship, I was aware of had been frequenting some of these pubs, and I found that you can go to a pub. It was at this stage I was getting served in most of them. So I got into the habit of kind of drinking a little bit to fill my spare time. And again, these were places where you'd meet people. So again, we were drinking, having pints and drinking at home and then drinking in people's houses. That sort of thing again. I don't think it really became a problem until much later. And it was like a lot of addictions or bad habits, it always starts gradually. You don't usually throw yourself into something at the deep end. So over many years, it evolved into a problem.
At what point what was the first realization that, maybe this doesn't suit me?
Oh, that happened a lot. That was happening from the point of. You see, I used to black out oftentimes when I drank, even when I was young. And a lot of people who I knew never experienced this. But what that meant, in effect, was that I would drink until I couldn't remember anything. And I couldn't remember the next day.
Blackout is that drink until you're literally physically unconscious? Or
No. I think that my tolerance was always on the low side. Before, I would continue to drink long after I'd reached enough to be drunk. And by blackout, I mean you'd wake up the next day and you couldn't remember anything. Now, maybe not anything, but you certainly couldn't remember who you'd met, conversations, blah, blah, blah. This blackout thing was a feature of my drinking. from about, we'll say, the midpoint until the last drink I ever took.
Okay. So it was nearly on every occasion when you were drinking, it was hitting a blackout.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't have an off switch. That was the problem, I think. I would drink to oblivion. And if I had the money for a drink, I wouldn't have one. If I didn't have enough money to drink to get drunk, I wouldn't do it.
So it'd be all or nothing.
Be all or nothing. So when I got my proper job, I was engaged to somebody. We were living together. We had a flat around the corner in Drumcondra, and there was a pub at the end of the road there called Kennedy's, and we were in there quite a bit, maybe twice, 3 times a week. Sundays in particular was good. A friend of mine from school started making an appearance. He reappeared on the scene, and I hadn't seen him in a while, 10 years or more. He appeared on the scene, and he and another friend of mine introduced ecstasy into the situation. I hadn't done it up to that point. A lot of people had, but I hadn't. And then for maybe 2 years, I would not drink unless I had an ecstasy or more. And then the issue with that is you will be awake for 24 hours. So generally, if you started on a Friday, you'd still be awake Saturday. Maybe you sleep for a while, but you wake up. But the one thing that you do is you wake up with a kind of a craving on you for a drink, because it'll take the edge off it and help you sleep and stuff. And that, to me, was the sticky slope, because you were almost using alcohol as a medicine at that point. Now, me and this girl, we split up, and it wasn't unconnected with the amount of drinking that was going on. She wasn't too bad, but I would drink a lot, which left me high and dry by myself. So I remember drinking every day for at least 2 years in my house. And I remember going out one day and noticing that there was a rose in my front garden. And at that point, I hadn't been aware of whether it was spring, summer, or what. I hadn't paid any attention because I wasn't outdoors. I hadn't done any of the things I used to like doing, fishing or any of that stuff. I hadn't done it. And that continued for a while. I met another person, another girlfriend. We used to go on holidays a lot. The holidays were, she was a drinking buddy, basically. We used to go drinking in vacations and all day, But again, it wouldn't be messy. We wouldn't go crazy or anything like that. But we drink a lot by anybody's standards. When she left the picture, I continued at that level. And I started going on holidays by myself. I'm going back now 15, 16 years. I had the money. I was never rich, but I had enough money to do this. I had no problems with the confidence of going away abroad by myself. And it wouldn't take me long to find places where people were drinking as well. So be it on a beach somewhere in Greece or in Malta or somewhere like that, I would generally find who the drinkers were, and we would be drinking. And I'm talking about I'd be drinking all day.
Okay.
Maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, a few pints, maybe drink until 12 o'clock in the day, maybe go home, have a sleep at 3 o'clock, something like that. Anyway, but it would be all day. This is the whole point. It would be an all day commitment.
And can I just ask, what were you drinking?
Okay, so I would drink anything. If my sister, for example, they used to host Christmas and stuff like that in their houses, there would be wine there. I'd drink wine till it came out my ears. I never really drank spirits because of the expense. Certainly not in the initial stages. So my tincture was always beer. I switched from cider to beer at the age 30 because cider was making my stomach sick. I remember that. So I moved to beer, and I found beer was very easy to drink and affordable. It was cheaper than cider, or it was more expensive than cider, but it was still affordable. So my Sunday when I was single, my Friday, Saturday, and Sunday usually involved me going to an off license, and I would start with 8 cans. And then I moved on to 12 cans. And then what would happen was I'd drink the 12 cans before the off license shut. And I'd telephone, there was a shop around the corner that delivered. And this was actually becoming a problem because they would deliver and I'd buy 8. There was no point buying 6, I'd buy 8. So I'd have 12 plus 8.
The off license would deliver beer?
Yeah. Okay. So I'd be sitting in the house basically. Usually the Sunday was particularly, heavy for this because I didn't have anything to do. I was rowing at some point. That was usually Saturdays. So that stopped me drinking on Fridays. But Sunday was usually a heavy session. So I would usually drink on a Sunday sort of 15, 16 cans. And this was after I stopped drinking every night of the week. I never drank that many in those days. But like I say, this was progressive and it was more and more and more. But when I used to go on holidays is when I'd go completely crazy in terms of the volume. And it wasn't unusual for me to drink 20 pints and spirits. Smoke 3 packets of cigarettes, something
Were
like that.
you, at that point, were you blacking out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So can I just ask, like if I met you and obviously I'd be like, oh, he's had a few drinks. Would I know you're blacked out?
No, absolutely no way. You wouldn't be able to tell. Okay. I mean, I never really fell over. I never started a fight in my life. I almost never vomited, certainly not in public. I used to do it when I woke up in the morning, I'd be heaving. But nobody could see any of that stuff. I used to travel on planes, completely paralytic. But I'd have it all rehearsed in my head, how I would deal with any questions or anything like that. Put one foot in front of the other. It was all very mapped out. It was all very clinical and scientific.
Did it impact your work?
Not really.
Okay.
I will say, though, that it impacted on my personality quite a lot. And not because I was drunk in work, and that's something I never did. I never drank in work. I mean, never. But I would be hungover until Wednesday from a Sunday session. And what people don't really realise about heavy drinking is that it affects you at every level of your physical being.
How do you mean?
What I mean by that is you don't eat much anyway. Your stomach is raw. Your larynx closes up. You can't really force food down. When you do force food down, you either vomit it up the next day, or it's not digested properly because the acid in your stomach from all the drinking has affected your stomach's ability to uptake nutrition. So although you might have a big beer belly, you're actually in a state of malnutrition. And a lot of the water-soluble vitamins, the B vitamins, for example, have to be replaced into the body on a daily basis, or very close to a daily basis. And if they're being either not uptaked or they're being pissed out, because you're urinating a lot. You're urinating the beer that you've drank, but you're also urinating your body's stock of water. Okay, so your electrolyte levels are low, your vitamin B levels are low, your protein levels. I was working out like at this stage. I was going to the gym all the time. I was eating when I wasn't drinking, but when I was drinking, I wasn't eating. I would go maybe 2 weeks without drinking. This was usually on holidays. I'd go to somewhere like Malta. I'd be just drinking every day. I wouldn't eat. I'd eat a burger for the whole time I was there. And then I'd spend a week or 2 weeks getting straight. And then sometimes I'd just go on this bender at home. I'd wake up early. I'd go and I'd get beers and I'd just sit there until it was 4 o'clock in the morning, just drink. And then I didn't realise, but I did, that there was a pub around the corner from me. I lived in Finglas. There's a pub not far, literally 5-minute walk, and it was a rough place. It was. I was told actually when I moved to Finglas years prior not to go near it, and I actually used to go there. I started going there when I had a day off. I'd go in at 10:30 in the morning, and it was a rough pub. But the people there were very, very friendly, and they were older men who had worked, for example, in the corporation, or they'd had jobs and they were retired usually, or a wife had died, or something like that. They were all generally older than me. And most of these characters were in there all day. They would have been in there from 10:30 in the morning to whatever time. And I rapidly found that I could go in there, talk to these. They were nice people. They were intelligent. They were friendly. They were articulate. There was none of this nonsense you associate with working class areas. They were good people. They weren't scumbags. They weren't criminals or anything like that. They were represented. Those people were there, but they weren't in my orbit. I always had a finely tuned self-preservation instinct. I kept away from people who were dangerous. I knew my share, but I generally kept away from them. So that's what I was doing. I was going in there, getting absolutely bladdered, and then I was going home. And oftentimes I'd bring 6 or 7 cans home with me as a takeaway. So it means sitting up till 3-4 o'clock in the morning, wake up the next morning and vomit, and then go into work having not eaten anything for ages.
Could anybody in work tell?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably. Nobody ever said it to me. You see, this is it. For me, it was a problem. But for everyone else, it wasn't. And people don't really give that much of a damn about whether or not you have a problem if it's not impacting them directly. And I had some friends in there, they knew I liked to drink, that's the way you would have put it, and I wasn't the only one. This was the thing, I wasn't the only one. But I was very private. I wouldn't have told people that I was having a problem with it. I would have just told people I had X amount of cans last night, and they would have believed me or they didn't believe me. It didn't matter. Like I say, it wasn't affecting anybody else.
Do you think because of the drinking culture in Ireland that it goes ignored?
I think that the drinking culture in Ireland has changed from those days. Young people in their 20s are more likely to go to the gym than they are to go drinking in pubs. They are, and then there's different types of young people in their 20s, you have to understand. Some of them will go to the gym and healthy eating and forming very, very healthy and serious relationships when they're that young with people, without drinking destroying it. Then there are others who will start smoking weed heavily, taking cocaine heavily. Again, they don't drink that much either. It's easier for them to smoke weed than to do cocaine, and they get into very serious problems, usually financially, because the way it works is they're smoking as a habit, and then eventually they outstrip their supply and they end up owing people money, so they usually end up selling. That's never really been a thing with drinking. You don't usually owe money. Now, that's, I don't know, maybe I'm kind of touching on it there. You can owe money to people as a result of boozing. And pawning things was something that I used to do, certainly before I was working. Pawning things to buy booze. It was something I know my dad did. And what we used to consider back in those days to be degenerate alcoholics. But I remember my dad saying to me one time, he says, "Oh, you can become an alcoholic very easily. You just have to be careful."
Can I ask you, was there a history of drinking in the family?
Yeah, my dad was a drinker. My mother wasn't, never touched it. When I say never touched it, I mean she drank a glass of baby sham once a year. She wasn't. My dad, he did. And again, with him it got worse as time went on, and his relationship with the rest of the family soured. And to some extent it impacted all of us. And I think actually his drinking affected, and maybe I'm not looking to blame anybody here, but I think that his drinking had a correlative causation on my own. And the way that would have been is, most people who drink heavily are doing it to mask something, either to get through the day or to mask trauma. I had my share, not as bad as many people, but my relationship with my father was a cause of trauma to me. He didn't. We fell out when I was a teenager, and he grew away from the rest of the family. But he didn't move out of the house, and he didn't stop boozing. He got a job, a shift worker, and people who work shifts will tell you that there's boozing in there. Drinking throughout the night, going home drinking to try and get to sleep, that sort of thing. But again, this also had the effect of normalising excessive drinking. I saw it as something that was almost normal, but. I think I probably did it because I had a lot of shit going on in my head that I wanted to remove, and it's a causative, it's a spiral argument, because some of the problems are caused by boozing, especially in relationships. You want to booze more to get rid of the problems that's been caused by booze in the first place, and so on and so forth and so forth, and eventually the problems are still there, but you're boozing so much it doesn't matter.
So it's a form of escape, and that explains the blackout.
Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah, it's a way of, people. Some people wake up and they can't get through the day. They just can't. They don't look forward to the day. They look forward to going to sleep, or they can't cope with whatever's going on in their minds. And drinking actually is a very, very easy way to push all that to the back. So a serious drinker will actually usually have given up on pretty much anything. You'll get to the stage where you don't really care about anything. And you can tell with people, they don't look, especially with men, they don't look after their appearance. They don't bathe. They don't change their clothes. It eventually catches up with you on a physical level as well as a mental level. It catches up with you. And that was basically why I could feel it was catching up with me. I could feel that it was damage. It was causing me damage. It was causing me damage with relationships. It was causing me physical damage. And to be honest with you, I just had this idea that it was going to kill me.
How did it impact your relationships?
I was really, really bad most of the time. I was I was okay. Like I say, I was never an aggressive drunk. But in the context of a relationship, when you're living in somebody's pocket, sometimes the proximity to somebody, especially to somebody that was close to you, was actually a trigger for you trying to push them away.
How do you mean?
Oftentimes, well, if you wanted to drink, you wanted to be left alone to do it, and you certainly didn't want somebody commenting on it. You remember the Turkish girl I went out with? She was at me the whole time.
So would you crave fights to give yourself space?
Oh yeah. You pick an argument or make an excuse why you couldn't come out and say, "Fuck this, I'm just going to stay at home and drink." Yeah, or I'm going to go out and drink. Yeah. A lot.
Okay. And when she raised the concern, how did you
Dismissed
deal
it.
with that?
Dismissed it completely, because I didn't feel that I had a problem because it didn't manifest the way I thought a problem would manifest. You're supposed to be, sleeping in the street. That was the way I saw a heavy booze problem. I had everything was sorted. I had a job. I had a house. I had everything was okay. So I didn't think I had a problem. As long as you can keep on top of everything, you think, well, it's all right.
So you would consider yourself functioning at that stage?
Yeah. Now, people talk about a functioning alcoholic. There's two words in that phrase. The one that they use, that they focus on, is the word functioning. But the second one is alcoholic. This is the one you should be functioning, or you should be focusing on. Never mind about the fact that you're functioning. It's the fact that you're an alcoholic. But the alcoholic doesn't see it that way. They see the functioning side. And the alcoholic is a by the way. It doesn't matter. It's not important to them.
Can you remember, like, at the height of your drinking, have you any incidences that happened that you just thought, oh my God, I need to stop drinking?
Yeah. I mean, I was never shy in retiring. That was the thing, and I kind of had what might be described as a bit of a crazy streak sometimes, and drinking could amplify that substantially to the extent that I could end up doing things that didn't make a lot of sense, even to me.
How do you mean?
Well, I'll give you an example. We were at a beach party in Sutton a long time ago, and Sutton is this was at the foot of Howth Cliff, which is a beach in Dublin. And I wasn't particularly drunk, but I was drunk enough anyway. So I decided that I was going to jump off this cliff into the sea, which was probably about a 20-foot drop. I don't really remember. Jumped into the sea anyway, and then swam back to shore in my boxer shorts. Dried out by the fire, and I was okay. I continued on. But when the tide went out about an hour later, I realised that there was a crag of rock sticking up underneath the sea where I jumped in, and I missed it by about 3 feet. From that height, I would have just eviscerated myself. Another example was I was going to a party. I drank a bottle of vodka and I was on my bike. I used to cycle everywhere, which is why I'm covered in so many scars. We were going to a party and I was on my bike with a few of my friends, and I'd gone through a red light at the bottom of a hill. I just didn't feel like stopping at the red light, and I ran underneath a van. The van ran me over. And I don't really remember too much about it, but I do remember there was a crowd. Fairly quickly, a crowd had shown up. And one of them was a taxi man who lived on my road, and I was giving a nonsense story to the van driver because he was obviously concerned about insurance, and I told him my name was Tony O'Toole or something like this. But anyway, that was the end of that. So I went on to the party, excruciating pains in my side, vomiting blood up, realised I'd busted a couple of ribs, and I think I had some sort of internal bleeding. But I went home and I was okay. I woke up, I was sore for a while. But when I think about that now, signs of internal bleeding and you're going home to bed after drinking vodka, I mean, there's a chance you couldn't wake up. But, I didn't think about that. No, I did some pretty crazy things. Some of them were, generally not aggressive things, but sometimes it did happen. There was a club nearby called the Grove, and we often had problems getting into that because of the way we were dressed. And the doorman, I think there was 2 doormen on the thing, and they attempted to stop me and a couple of friends one night. And we said, well, we're not having this. So we kind of regrouped and then charged the gate. And the guy went to hit me with an iron bar, and somehow through some luck I just knocked it out of his hand and picked it up and ran at him. So the doorman ran into the pub, and we besieged it. And eventually I think the police arrived and we decided to leave. But I was seen by my sister's friend swinging a chain over my head and just roaring like a complete maniac. The interesting thing is that didn't do my reputation in that peer group any harm.
That was your peer group.
My peer group, it didn't do me any harm at all. I just had the reputation for being a bit of a loony, and booze only brought that out in me, you know. So I think that surviving a number of near-death situations, and I'm only scratching the surface here, again, it's made me continue without any sense of responsibility or consequence.
Did you attempt to stop a number of times, or was there just one time where you just stopped?
3 months. I was offered for 3 months one time. Me and a friend of mine, he wasn't a big drinker, but we gave up cigarettes and drinking for 3 months. And I can't remember exactly.
How were those 3 months?
Oh, it was grand. It was fine.
Were you white knuckling it?
No. I just quit.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. I just quit for 3 months. That's all I can tell you about it. It was nothing particularly special. But that was the only time I did. That was the only time. I never gave it up before, or for any length of time. 3 months was the longest.
And you'd lost relationships over it.
Lot. 3, maybe 4 of them. See, I never, without sounding like some sort of a big head, I never had any issues with women. I never had an issue with
you mean as in finding women or meeting
them.
women?
I never had an issue in that way. I wasn't somebody who was, I certainly wasn't lacking in confidence, and I suppose to some extent they found me attractive, so I didn't mind. And as with that in your pocket, you kind of think, oh well, it doesn't matter how I treat women or how I behave in relationships, or I'm not concerned about finding another person going forward, And this was very self-destructive way of thinking, because when an addiction takes over your life, the first thing it does is take over your mind, and it tells you lies. It tells you lies about what's happening. It tells you lies about what's everyone else is doing. It lies to you, and you lie to everybody else.
Is that to protect itself?
I don't know. They say alcoholism is a sickness. And let's say that it is an illness, it's a sickness. So a sickness is caused usually by a pathogen or a disease, or by a bacteria. A virus. So if you were to say it was a virus only wants to reproduce itself at the expense of the host. That's what it does. And booze changes your chemical structure. It changes your physical structure, and it changes your mental structure so that it can continue with itself within you. You're the host, you see. The booze is the virus and you're the host. And in order for it to continue, this is just my theory. In order for it to continue, it will eventually destroy the host, because all viruses do. But it first must change the host. And that's what people don't realize about heavy drinking, is that it is changing them. They're allowing it to happen. But as it continues, it becomes easier for them to allow it to happen because of the effect that it has upon you. It changes you on a molecular level, on a chemical level, and on a physical, mental level. So when you wake up in the morning, instead of going out for a jog, you're going for a drink. When you go on a holiday, instead of going scuba diving, you're going drinking all day.
Is that not combined with physical addiction as well?
Yeah. But that's exactly it, you see. A virus isn't a mental problem. A virus is a physical problem. It's the invasion of your body by something that's less friendly.
Going back to your relationships, and you said you had no problem meeting women and engaging in relationships.
No.
But you had no problem letting them go either.
No.
So are you saying that you never attached to any of your relationships?
No, I attached to several of them, but this isn't all about booze. I mean, relationships, sometimes they work and sometimes they didn't, but a couple of fairly major relationships in terms of long-term and people who I did actually like, I can tell you now with my hand on my heart that it was booze that caused the breakup.
The breakup. And it was just that they had enough, or...
They had enough, maybe, or I had enough. I'm not really sure. But when you see, if somebody is fighting against a drinker, they're fighting against the person, plus they're fighting the drink, and the drink is a powerful force in a person. So,
I've often thought with addiction, if you're in love with somebody with an addiction, you can't win. Like, the addiction will win.
They have to be addicted to
Unless,
you
yeah,
and not something else.
yeah, but the addiction will win, like quicker than any other women or any other men or whatever, or them having addiction. You can't fight against it.
No, you can't. And really, an ordinary person within a relationship doesn't really have much of a chance because they don't know what they're up against. If you're in the throes of an addiction, we'll say to alcohol, as a person who drinks a lot, the booze is telling you how to behave in the relationship so that you can continue to drink. And it's telling you need to get rid of this person because they're causing you a problem. They're telling you need to stop drinking.
So the minute they question, hold a mirror up, ask you any accountability, your drink is telling you.
What do you know about it? You're wrong. You don't know anything about it. You're exaggerating, you're lying, you're manipulative. This is what you're saying to the person who's trying to help you. Now, maybe they're trying to help you, I don't know. You don't really care. That's the whole point. And you look upon a relationship, especially a profound relationship, you look upon that as an impediment to what you want to do. Now, this doesn't happen all the way through. This is, at some stage, it may or may not come to that point where you realise that the relationship is stopping you from drinking. And if you go into a relationship with somebody who is also a drinker, and I have done this, it's not a relationship, it's a drinking arrangement with somebody.
It's a drinking partnership.
It's a drinking partnership. And I've done this. They did it too. But eventually what happens is that you get sick of even them. Especially if they try to say, well, maybe we should stop, or maybe we shouldn't drink so much, or maybe how about not going out tonight? That's what would make you fly into a rage.
So the minute they're looking for accountability or boundaries, or just I have enough of this.
Yeah. Now, you wouldn't always cut them loose, but ultimately that's the way it ends up. You see, an addiction is an addiction, and it could be gambling, it could be watching porn, it could be drugs, it could be drink. It doesn't really matter. Addiction is the important part, that you are addicted to it. That means you cannot survive without it. You're not willing to stop.
So at what point did you stop 7 years ago?
I had been on holidays in Malta and I had a fantastic time. I was away for 10 days by myself. I knew people over there. Now, like I said, I used to be able to hunt out people who were fellow drinkers. There was a pub in Malta, still there. And I had a good coterie of friends that I'd met over the years. And we used to go there all day. And I had moved from drinking beer to drinking beer and whiskey. And I had some experience with cocaine in the past. It wasn't something that I ever really enjoyed, and it wasn't something that I really ever paid for. But on this holiday, I did a bit of it, enough anyway to keep me drinking more than usual. When I got back, I went to this pub that I told you about in Finglas, and I got absolutely bladdered. That would have been the Sunday or Monday night, I'm not sure. And I'd never really done this before, but I went sick the next day and the next day. And I just went to the pub. When I got home from the pub the next day and woke up, I was in the full withdrawals, alcohol withdrawals. This isn't a hangover, this is alcohol withdrawals. When you go to alcohol withdrawal symptoms, you're never going to go back to having a hangover again. It doesn't work like that. You've changed and altered your body and your mind composition. Now you are in the grip of it. What I didn't realise at the time is that alcohol withdrawal is dangerous, can be lethal, can kill you. You need to do it medically supervised.
I'm going to just stop for 1 second, Eric. I can edit this out. Sorry.
Right.
Sorry. So, just go back to alcohol withdrawal.
Yeah, alcohol withdrawal. Was in work, and my legs were starting to twitch, and my arm. This was after I'd been on vacation in Malta, and I'd done 2 days in the pub, 2 full days in the pub. This doesn't sound like a big deal, but the amount I was drinking was staggering. And I would wake up with a can or whatever beside the bed. So I was at no stage was I sober for that 18 or 19 days. I think it was that long anyway. And that is more than long enough, drinking at that level, to suffer alcohol withdrawals. And I think I might have had a kind of a taste of it before, but this was different. And I had to leave work, and a friend of mine who was a nurse, I texted him. He knew exactly what the story was, and he says, you can't just quit drinking like that. He says, you can't. He says, dangerous. He says, go and get a few cans, he says, but don't get drunk again. So I went home from work, and I got 4 cans of beer, and I drank those, and I woke up the next day, and the withdrawals weren't that bad, but I was still in a bad way.
And what are the symptoms of withdrawals?
Withdrawals are kind of twitches in the legs, shaking in the hands. You know, people say, oh, I'm shaking, I need a drink. That's alcohol withdrawals, they're shaking. The mental aspect of it is...
Sorry, Derek. The dog walking.
Okay.
So the physical, tell me about the physical.
The physical is shaking, legs are shaking, hands are shaking, you can't hold anything, you can't concentrate on anything. Stomach churning, inability to sleep. I mean, you're exhausted, you haven't slept properly since you started any of this because you're not sleeping. See, when you go to sleep after drinking, you're not asleep, you're unconscious. You're not catching up on anything, you're not resting yourself. Terrible nightmares, sweating, absolute gallons of perspiration just pumping off you, not eating, this sort of thing. So the last time I got a few cans, I woke up the next day and it was still bad, but it wasn't as bad as I had been because I knew what was happening now. And I did an unsupervised withdrawal. I went cold turkey. So after 3 days I wasn't too bad, but what I did was I was at home, and in work we have a thing called the staff assistance program, and I rang them up. And they said, well, what's up? And I said, well, I've been drinking heavily for X amount of time, and I'm black. She goes, are you suffering blackouts? And I said, all the time. And she goes, okay, well, this is very serious. This is binge drinking. And an hour later, a fellow rang me up, and he says, I am a psychologist and blah, blah, blah. And you've been referred by this service, and you get 6 free sessions. Went to see the man. Told him what the story was. He said, okay, here's what you have to do. He says, you cannot cut down because you're juggling with dynamite. You have it in your hands, and eventually you're going to fall off. It's going to stop and it's going to blow you up, he says, and you'll be back far worse. He said, you have to stop and become sober. And I said, okay. He says, can you do it? I said, I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, okay, I'll try. He said, can you do a year? I said, yeah, I'll try. I went to see him for 6 weeks. Every time I saw him, he didn't want to listen to me telling stories about my upbringing or my mental issues or how bad I felt about anything.
My traumas.
Any of this nonsense. He said that all his interest in me was maintaining my sobriety. He said, your problem is with booze. Maintain your sobriety, and that's your problem is gone. I said, fine. He said, would you be able to tell people that you're an alcoholic? I said, yeah. He said, there's an AA class, AA, whatever you call it, in St. Catherine's Church, the back of Grafton Street. He said, would you attend that? I said, okay. So I went along. I found it interesting. I went to 3, 4, 5 AA meetings. And I realised that a lot of the people there were a lot worse than me. A lot worse.
How do you mean, as in?
People who were in a bad way. There was people who had plainly been using drugs as well. Plainly been using crack cocaine, heroin, excessive cocaine use. There was one guy told me he was in Cocaine Anonymous as well. There was people who were crying in the meetings because they were sober 4 or 5 days and saying that they weren't sure they were going to be able to do the 6th. And whereas I found it to be rewarding to some extent, I didn't think that I needed it right at that point. So I had to say to myself, I think that if I'm surrounding myself with people like this, it's not going to help me the way I can help myself. So I stopped going after 6 meetings or 7 meetings or something like that. And instead, I just said from that point, well, I'm not drinking anymore. I haven't drank in, I don't know how long it was weeks, maybe months at this stage. And I got a lot of support. I told people. I told my family. I told somebody in work. I told everybody in work. I had nothing to lose. I wasn't looking for special treatment. I just felt that this was something that's after happening. I'm going to tell people.
You put it out on the table.
I put it on the table. And I might have gotten away with not telling them. It wouldn't have made any difference. People either liked me or they didn't. And like I said, I don't think my boozing was affecting anybody particularly. But I just told them what I was doing. And the interesting thing about my job is that we've had several people that have died as a result of alcohol. We've had a couple of people who've committed suicide. We've had at least one person who died of anorexia. And alcoholism was a thing that was not spoken about in my workplace. It's really not the same now, but I'm going back 10 years or so. There was quite a bit of it around. And it being a problem that wasn't discussed. And it certainly wasn't being discussed at management level.
If there was a lot of staff suffering.
I wouldn't say there was a lot of them, but there was a few.
It was enough.
There was certainly 3 or 4 I could think of, including a woman who's now dead. And she was a lovely woman, but drink got her. And I was a little bit annoyed because they knew what was happening to her. They didn't intervene. Now, maybe it wasn't in their remit. Maybe they weren't allowed to. But they didn't try to help her. And when I told them, no, they didn't care. I mean, honestly, they did not care at all. I don't even think the man who I told I don't think it registered.
Do you think there wasn't a policy? I know certainly where I worked, there was a policy. Plenty of our staff were sent to rehab.
I never heard of anyone being sent.
Yeah.
Never.
No, it was in place.
Okay.
And work covered it.
No, never. If it was a part of my workplace, I had never heard about it, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I don't think it was in place. And I think had it been, there'd be at least 2 people now that I can think of that would be still around that aren't. And this kind of comes back to the attitude that people have to, particularly with men. Okay, men have as many or more problems than women. Usually of our own making, but not always. And men being men traditionally didn't talk about these problems. They tended to mask them, They didn't tell people that they were unhappy with X, Y, or Z. Now everybody talks about it, but they didn't. And as such, there wasn't really a mechanism to help people. So we were at a meeting where it was an information session, how we could identify students who were in distress or who were having issues. And I said this more than once, I said, the students come here for 4 years and then they leave. They're generally supported at home. They generally have families. I said, the staff here are here for 40 years or 45 years. We don't all have families. We don't all have home supports. I said, where's the mechanism to help the staff? And I said that twice at these kind of things. And I got a blank. There was no answer. And then I said, there is the staff assistance program, which nobody was aware of. I can't remember how I found out about it. I wasn't looking for it, but I knew about it before it happened. And there was no assistance to anybody available then. And I don't think that anything beyond that is available now either. So I think that men's mental health is to some extent being addressed more than it used to be. But I don't think it's going ever to be mainstream as an issue.
You don't think it's been addressed enough?
You see, who's going to address it? If you're suffering from issues like that, you need to be the one to broach the subject. Because you can't really, like I said, if somebody told me, oh, you're drinking too much and la la la, you're going to turn on them and say, mind your own business, or what do you know about it, or la la la. People leave their jobs because of that sort of thing. People are coming in every day drunk and they say, here, listen, we think you need to go and see somebody. Well, screw you and your job, I'm out of here. That gives them more of an opportunity then, to continue their full-fledged addiction.
So they don't have to deal with it.
They don't have to deal with the hassle of work giving them shit.
So it's like your relationships, an addict will cut off their relationship, cut off work, cut off whatever is challenging.
Of course they will.
Their addiction.
Yeah, because the addiction is the primary driver in their life. The addiction, it's called an addiction for a reason. They're addicted to it and they cannot help it.
So the last 7 years, when you go on holidays now. How did you readjust? How did you find a readjustment?
The interesting thing is that within 12 months of me quitting, I remember going through the first year sober, and I decided I was going to market on Facebook. 6 months sober, and then I did 12 months sober. And what was interesting was the amount of people that liked it, shall we say. There was comments on it. I didn't have to say this, and I wasn't fishing for attention or anything like that. I just thought it was something that I wanted to mark as a milestone, and I wanted to do it publicly. So people would know that I was sober. Not that they cared, it didn't matter to me whether they cared or not. I was telling them. It's the same as people putting on their face and saying, look at me this morning. Bullshit, I don't care. They didn't care, it doesn't matter. But people did care, that was the interesting thing. And some people had come to me and say, well, you were a great man for drinking. That's how the Irish describe a heavy drinker. You're a great man for the drink, you know. You loved the drink. They didn't say drink was fucking you up or destroying you or turning you into a fucking mess. They never say any of that. They say, oh, you were... So within the year, I went back to the scene of the crime. I went back to Malta, to the same pub where I had been, where all that boozing had taken place 12 months previously, maybe a bit longer. I went back and I met the same people, and I drank non-alcoholic beers, and I drank Coke and water, whatever. But I couldn't stay there till 4 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't. I could stay there till 11 o'clock at night. I found the company boring, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just meant that I couldn't engage on the same level. With drunk people, it's difficult to engage when you're sober. Also, you don't really feel the need to stay out that late. And now I can do it now. That's interesting. But the presence of booze around me like that, plus the people around me who I knew who were drinkers, I was only like a sip away from starting all over again. And nobody there to tell me not to do it. Not one person would have told. My mother wasn't there. Nobody was there to say, don't drink that beer. They would have loved if I'd have had a drink with them. And it would have been difficult. Or it was difficult not to. But I had to get that out of my system. I had to go back there. And I went back to Greece. It was another place I used to do a lot of boozing. And I turned up with all the people on the beach. And these were much older. They weren't alcoholics or anything like that. They were drinkers, so they drink all day. But they weren't alcoholics. There was nobody in that part of Greece who drank the way I did. And I don't mean that in any kind of a boastful way. I was in a restaurant, and the waiter said to me, oh, where are you from? And I says, I'm from Dublin, Ireland. He goes, jeez, he said, I remember a few years ago there was a guy on the beach up the road there. This was a beach club. He said, there was a guy from Dublin there. Jesus, he used to drink like 20 pints of beer every day and blah, blah. I said, that was me. He says, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, that was me. He says, yes. He says, you're not drinking now. I said, no, I quit. But again, it was the same thing. You're tired and you're kind of going to bed by 11 or 12 o'clock, you know.
I know the first time I experienced that is when I was pregnant. So I'm not drinking anymore.
You gave up because you were pregnant?
Yes. But like I was going out socially.
Yeah.
With friends. And 11 or 12 o'clock, I was like, oh my God, is this what it's actually like? Because before I would have been drinking.
Yeah.
Now I wasn't. Now I was seeing what people looked like.
Yeah.
At a certain hour, there is a change and a shift.
12 o'clock.
Yeah. People who talk to, best friends that wouldn't talk to each other in the street, shouting to themselves, talking to themselves, really.
And another thing I noticed as well, there comes a point where people say to you the same thing 3 or 4 times in a 5-minute conversation.
They're talking to themselves.
They're asking you over and over again a question you've already answered. And as a sober person, that's a real pain in the ass. But as a sober person who used to drink, the worst part about that is that you're saying, I was a lot worse. I would come up to people and I'd be bladdered. I'd be absolutely not making any sense at all to people.
Thinking you were great.
Thinking you were a great conversationalist and great crack, and assuming everyone was as drunk as you. And, maybe they were, but most of the time they weren't. So, yeah, that was a thing. And it took a while, So, I mean, I think as age progresses, you don't want to spend as much time in the pubs anyway. And I rarely do now. I rarely go out at all. But I'm still able for the family dues at Christmas and things like that where they're all drinking wine. But again, they're not heavy immersions in booze. I was talking to my brothers-in-law at Christmas there, and 2 of them were on non-alcoholic beers. Me on non-alcoholic beers, and it was the younger crowd that were drinking beers, but they weren't drinking the way we used to. We used to go absolutely crazy. We'd be drinking at 4:30 in the morning on Christmas Day, and then we'd be fighting in the kitchen, rolling around in the back garden and all this sort of crap, having these ridiculous arguments. you know, as I touched on, I don't think the younger people are into that now.
I have to agree, the attitude has changed. I'm going to put out a weird concept. I remember hearing Ireland was a nation of alcoholics from a fallout from the Civil War and the awful stuff we did to each other. And that's...
I don't agree.
I don't, yeah.
I don't agree at all.
Do you think it's genetic makeup?
Possibly. I think, if you want to call a spade, I think the Irish drink so much because of the culture of pubs, which are everywhere. And I think that applies more to our poor past than anything. The Irish middle class has expanded a lot in the last 20 years. But prior to that, in the 70s, you were either rich or you were poor, and most people were poor. And the poor drink, you know. They used to do that. They would go to the pub, even they had no money for food. But they would spend... There's even a quote from, is it the Dubliners song? When you haven't got a rasher to grease your pan, a pint of plain is your only man. There's eating and drinking in a pint of Guinness. So that'd line your stomach if you had no food. So the food wasn't really important. And these people used to lead very short lives oftentimes. But I think as well, somewhat controversially, I think it's a lot to do with the weather.
I was actually going to say the weather.
You know what it's like here, for God's sake. We've had 3 months of unmitigated misery.
And I have to say, I know for you, I've gone through that more or less sober. It's not easy, but I'm like, the weather's so bad, if I drink, I won't stop.
You'd want to bloody drink, wouldn't you? I mean,
yeah, but I'd just be afraid. It's so bad, I wouldn't stop drinking. I literally, just have been sober more or less for the last few months, and that weather has been horrendous.
Yeah. But it's... My dad actually used to say, this was his answer to everything, it's no wonder people drink. And I think he did have a point there. When your life is so bad, it's a very, very handy out.
It's an escape.
But when the weather is so bad, it's a handy out. You know what it's like in the pubs and skerries there. They're full all the time, you know. Now, if you go to Greece, somewhere where it's sunny most of the time, there are drinkers there, but they don't drink the same way as the Irish do. They don't. They have a pint that lasts them an hour, 2 hours maybe, one bottle of beer or a small sambuca or whatever. They'd have an hour. We didn't do it like that ever. It was buying rounds with people. And as quick as the drink is gone, it's your round, move on.
Horse it in.
We horse it in. So I think it might be related to the weather. It might be related to the culture. It might be related to... I don't think it's the Civil War. I don't know anybody who knows anything about it.
No, it's just something I heard before.
No, we were capable of... You could say, okay, it's a hangover to the Great Potato Famine, but who carries that around in their mind? They just don't. I think it's the bloody weather, to be honest. There's also as well... There's some cultures, or not some cultures, but there's some ethnicities that can't hold beer.
Like Indians, American Indians.
American Indians, they can't metabolize it. So if they have a taste for... Some of them have a taste for spirits and whiskey and stuff. And they get absolutely wrecked.
I think Asian is similar.
I think Maoris maybe also. And now, sorry lads, we're not being racist or anything like this. It's just we may be right and we may not be right. Australian Aboriginals as well have a huge appetite, but a very small capacity.
Do you think it's like, so it's a biological, nearly like an allergy? Like, I know for me, I can't touch spirits.
Yeah.
I just can't. And I don't, because not to 60 out of it. Yeah. And just there's no, I don't know where the
off switch
is, or not even the off switch, but I've overshot the runway before the drink has even finished processing in me. So I just can't touch it, full stop. And I always thought, is that because it's like my biological system, that it's like an allergic reaction in some degree? Like, I know my father would have totally different personality with spirits and whatever about beer, but if you've seen them on spirits, off the Richter scale.
Same with my father. He was not the most pleasant individual drinking pints, but if you started mixing whiskey into the mixture, you see, if you take a pint of beer is 4.5% and a glass of whiskey is 37%. Now, obviously, you're not going to drink a pint of whiskey, but 3 or 4 big glasses adds up to a pint very quickly. But as well, you're not able to do that, right? So you say, but if I was to give you a program of drinking, I could get you up there.
build up tolerance.
Exactly.
Okay.
You have to push through it, through
don't
the
think I'll
discomfort of it. But no, that's the important thing to succeed as a full-blown alcoholic, is you have to keep drinking when your body is screaming at you to tell you not, and your friends are screaming at you to tell you not to. So you have to put work in. If you wake up in the morning and you're vomiting up bile, yellow liquid that's burning the acid off the teeth of your mouth, and you're not going to do anything but want and desire and insist on having another drink, then that's your practice right there, you know. So you see, because I never married and I never had children, I always had the time. That was the important thing. You have the time to do it, you have the money to do it, and you've no one to tell you not to do it. These are the trifecta for any uninterrupted addiction cycle, in my opinion. You had a child. You couldn't drink. You could, but
I didn't.
But you didn't. And when you got into the habit of not drinking, then you continued the habit of not drinking. Had you got into the habit of drinking, then you probably would have had a similar problem.
Tolerance. I know somebody recently that was in rehab last year and had a relapse and drank a litre of Jägerbomb.
Oh, Jesus. That's revolting.
But I'd be dead. Or in A&E.
But had you put your mind to it and put the work in, started with 2 glasses of Jaeger a day, you'd have been able to drink a bottle. This all sounds absurd. When I started this conversation, I told you I was bladdered on half a 2 litre of cider.
Okay.
And then I would be completely drunk to blackout on 3 litres, or 2 litres of cider, which is 3.5 pints. And then my last drinking session was 20 pints, plus spirits. And I'm no Superman or anything like that. My stomach is the same size as it always was.
So what you're saying is it takes more and more quantity to get you to the place that got you there. At a very small
well, I mean,
quantity.
with addictions, with drugs or addictions to anything really, you're going to require more and more, because the first hit, the first drink, the first trip, whatever it is you want to talk about, you're never going to go back. You're not going to revisit that time. It always feels different thereafter. So if you're drinking heavily after 10 years of drinking heavily, you're probably trying to find a neutral ground 11 years ago where you had drinks and you really enjoyed it and you could go to bed. You know what I'm saying? You could say, oh, well, I only had 4 drinks that night and I had a great time. But the 4 drinks isn't hitting the side. It's not doing anything for you. So the 4 drinks is 8 drinks, 12 drinks, 16 drinks. It makes no difference. You're not going to get that time back. And as you're adding more and more booze to the mix, it's having all those compounding effects on you that alcohol does. That's what it does. The reason you had a great time in the 4 drinks is because you only had 4. You know, it's when people start using heroin. Now, it's not something I've ever done, but the mechanism is the same. They do it, and they probably didn't like it the first time, and they mightn't have liked it the second time. But at some point, they're going to get a golden glow from it, and it fills the whole body, and it becomes a warm embrace, and the whole world can go hang, and you don't feel your problems. You're chasing that moment for the rest of your career as a drug addict, that with heroin in particular. You're chasing that and you're never going to get it back.
Is it not a case that eventually you're sick and in pain and you need the heroin just to feel normal?
Exactly the same with booze, because what's happened is when you become addicted, when you're not using it and you need it, you start to feel withdrawal. With heroin, the withdrawal symptoms are very, very noticeable after 4 weeks of heavy using. With alcohol, you don't need 4 weeks, you need a lot longer. But if you drink every day for 4 weeks, doesn't matter for how long you've done it, but if you drink every day heavily for 4 weeks, you're going to come out the other end with withdrawal symptoms. Okay. And I've gone into pubs and I've been unable to hold the pint in my hand with the shakes from the night before. And if I don't get that pint into me, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't see myself surviving another hour. As soon as the booze hits my stomach, it takes 5-10 minutes, the shake goes away and everything feels good again. And then from that point on, all you're thinking about is the next drink. You're not thinking about the one in front of you, you think about the next one. That's when you know you have an issue.
You're thinking of the next
one. You're thinking about 3 hours down the line. You're thinking about, will I get to X, Y, and Z place before they shut? Wow. Do I have enough cans at home? I might have 6 in the fridge, but maybe I've only got 3. Now, you're already 8 pints to the good, and it's 9 o'clock at night. I need to get to the off license because 3 isn't going to do me. And you're already after been drinking all day, and you know the 3 cans in the fridge is not going to get you through the night. And you immediately start to get that terrible anxiety, that terrible feeling in your chest or in the pit of your stomach of fear that you won't have enough beer or you won't have enough drink. And that can wake you up in the middle of the night. That can wake you up at 6 o'clock in the morning, that fear, that anxiety, eating your guts. And they talk about the fear after booze. That's a thing. That's a real thing. A terror. And if you have to be in work on the Monday and this is Sunday night, you're waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're not getting back to sleep, and you know that's only, your day hasn't even started. So that's fucking your brain up, because what it's done to you the night before, you've got the whole day then to think about it without the boozing.
But it's all consuming. How can you fit anything into your life? How can you fit in relationships or ambitions or, do you know?
You got to make yourself do it. Somewhere in the back, I was maybe more fortunate than some people. I don't know. But I always had something in the back of me that said, this is not going to be my life. This is not going to be my death.
This is while you were drinking.
Yeah. So I was always conscious of the fact that I needed to give up. Like I said, there was no intervention. I know somebody actually told my sister that I was sitting in the pub at 11 o'clock in the morning, which was, a kind of an intervention. But they couldn't stop me doing it. They might have, to some extent, guilted and shamed me a little bit, and also involved a family member, which, helped a little bit. But again, they didn't take the drink out of my hand.
No, the choice is with you.
And they didn't stop me from going to the off license the next day.
The choice is with you.
The choice is with me. So you've got to do it yourself. Some people will blame issues, and they will blame all kinds of things. But realistically, it's your hand that holds the pint. And you're the one who tilts it down your throat. Nobody really is being captive and force-fed booze.
It's also your hand that puts it down and steps away.
It's your hand that puts it down, exactly. So you've got to, if you think that you're having a problem, then you're already on the path to recognising the problem. And if you can recognise it, then you can deal with it. But if you don't think you have a problem, if you don't recognise it, then the problem can slip right by and become huge.
What regrets do you have for over the years you were drinking?
The amount of money I spent was shocking. All the money that I spent on booze is gone forever. And it's money that I could have invested or spent on whatever. I was never, like I say, I was never poor. I was never destitute or anything like that. But if I'd have made investments, say 20 years ago, put in money into X, Y, or Z, this is the way I'm thinking now, I'm thinking about retirement and thinking about getting older and stuff. But at the time, you're not thinking like that. But I messed up some relationships with people who really didn't deserve it, And I see people who have children, and I see people who are happily married, or they pretend to be happily married and stuff like that. And that could have been me, but it wasn't. Maybe it was booze, maybe it wasn't. But I think, the balance of probabilities, it probably was drinking that caused a lot of these issues. So money, I got away without too many health problems. I was very, very fortunate.
Did you ever revisit any of your relationships when you were sober?
Since then?
Yeah, I don't mean revisit as in go back into the relationship with them, but just even to talk about the drinking time, or is it just that's all packed away?
With them?
It? Yeah.
Oh, no. They sure I wouldn't be in the same orbit. The thing is, when a relationship splits up for good, and it doesn't really matter how mad it was you were into each other, unless you're going back to childhood sweethearts and you were doing it for 20 years or whatever, or there's kids involved or something. When it goes wrong and stays wrong. And I've always found that women, and this is no criticism, but women will usually find somebody very quickly afterwards. So they move on and they move away. And that's okay. That's just the way it is. But usually if a relationship is split up, it's split up for a reason. I mean, I've never believed in going back to a relationship no matter what caused the issue.
No, I don't mean going back into a relationship, but I just mean...
Going back to the relationship.
Like, have you any regrets that you feel like you'd want to reach out to a past relationship and say...
No, because I'm going to text somebody and say, oh, well, sorry, I was such a bastard because I was drunk all the time. They know that.
Yeah.
And then you sound like an asshole,
so you don't need to go around looking for redemption.
Well, I'm not going to get it. They're okay. It's not like I've destroyed their lives. I don't think it was that bad. I was never what you would call one of these people that was the abusive part of an abusive relation. It didn't work like that. It was just an asshole. But I'm not going to ring somebody up or text somebody and say, hey, how are you? Sorry about that. I was drunk. They know I was drunk, you know? So I've got to take it. I got to deal with it myself.
So you've done 7 years.
Yeah.
How are you looking forward to the next 7 years?
Don't ask me questions like that. I have no idea. How the hell do I know what I'm going to be doing in 7 years' time? I don't know. Just keep going on. I have my little hobby business. I'm working out. Happy in work. Happy in, the relationships that I have with people in work and my family. I'm not having arguments with anybody, any of that stuff. So, just try and be as good of a person as I can. And just hopefully do what... just be happy. Try to be happy. That's it. Always moderately optimistic. But you do need to have something in your mind or in your life, because it'd be easy to fall not necessarily into the habit of drinking, but you could get into the habit that preceded it, But I'm much older now, I could never go back there. Now, never say never, but at the moment, the thoughts of drinking would make me ill, would make me physically sick. But again, like I said, if you put your mind to it, you can. I've been off cigarettes for long enough, and so have you. You're only ever one from starting again. So I have to be mindful of it. But time moves on, the same opportunities don't present themselves the way they used to. You don't find yourself in pubs the way you used to. You're not drinking cans by the canal anymore. The booze isn't put in front of you now. People who I used to, my peers, those that are still alive, or kind of have adult children now, They might have a drink twice a week or once a week, if at all. I don't know. But they've moved on and they've moved away. And this is the thing as well. When you take something out of your life that was so important, it can leave a hole. With me, it didn't really, because it was a hole that I didn't want there. But I can see how it would. I can see in somebody who's in a worse position than me, maybe, who has an addiction, a deep-seated addiction, could find themselves unable to cope with suddenly having a lot of time and a lot of headspace and stuff like that. And I think it's necessary to some extent to be strong, And people say that, it's a cliche. Oh, you have to be strong. You do. You do. Because, as you said, you're the only person who's going to help yourself. And in order to help yourself, you've got to... It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it. So if you imagine that your life is a muscle, your brain is a muscle, you've got to train everything. You've got to keep on top of... You've got to keep living the way you can, And whatever your interests might be.
Keep putting one step forward.
And just, But I remember Mike Tyson said as well, you got to forgive yourself sometimes. You've got to forgive yourself. Because
yeah.
If you think backwards to all the terrible things you've done or terrible things you've been a party to, you'll find yourself crashing very quickly. Mentally, you'll find yourself falling back into a hole. So sometimes you've got to just wipe the slate clean. As long as, you haven't done something that you can't get over, that, you haven't killed somebody or been involved in something terrible, like blah, blah, blah. You can heal, and it takes time. But your life is to live, and you've only got one of them, and nobody's going to live it for you, And realistically, nobody really cares. Nobody else cares that much. You could be the most wonderful person in the world, the most loving family. You're brown bread, they throw you in a hole. They'll cry a few things, but you'll be forgotten about very quickly,
And certainly in big companies, you're a number.
They do not give a damn. And this is important, So people use their job as they use their job regard their job as being the be all and end all, and it shouldn't be.
So man overboard and the ship just keeps going on.
Of course it keeps going, yeah. Although in my job particularly, it provides quite a lot of structure to my day, and I enjoy that. I like being busy to an extent, so I enjoy the commuting process, and I have a great job.
So tell me about your we're probably going about we're going about an hour and 15 minutes here. Tell me about your business.
What business?
Your Skerry's Rock Art. So that came about in sobriety, didn't it?
Say, when did that happen? That would have happened COVID. The time we did the lockdown in COVID was probably, I think, April. And yeah, that was a case of, what the heck am I going to do? I remember the weather was very nice, but I really needed to find something to do. And I'd been kind of casting around to think of something crafts-based that I could do to occupy myself, but I really couldn't arrive at anything, I wasn't a painter or anything like that. But I remember that I had a mold, a skull mold in the shed that me and a friend had bought years previously to just make skulls. So I dug it out and I started making skulls. And then I was watching YouTube videos because we had a lot of time. I was watching YouTube videos on how to make molds, latex, brush on latex. And there was a company, there still is, and they delivered during lockdown. So I got the latex from there, and started making molds out of various things. I'd gotten a gargoyle in France, and started making the molds from that. And this was as much to pass the time as anything else. But at some point, I sold a couple of skulls. At some point, a couple of them sold, and then it clicked in my mind. Somebody's after buying these things, and if they buy them once, they'll buy them again. So I started making more stuff, different types of stuff, and I was enjoying myself. Started experimenting with different materials, cement, concrete, plaster, whatever. And this brought me up to when I met my last girl, Roxana, and I was making molds when I met her first. I was making them in the house. This was my full-time kind of occupation, making molds. Then I started doing the fairs and things. But I was watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to paint these things. You can sell them unpainted, but you'll sell them for a lot more and a lot more rapidly if they're painted. And then experiment with different colour tones. My granny's house was had a lot of 19th century features in it because she was born in 1910, so there was a lot of stuff in the house that would have come from her mother. So what I mean by that is there was metal figurines and things that were brass, bronze, copper, whatever, with a patination on them, verdigris on them, different colours. And these always fascinated me. I liked those colours, and I started experimenting with things in those colours. And all that, you know what I mean? It was like a half, it wasn't creative composition painting. It was making things and then painting them to my own taste. Started doing markets and stuff. The markets have gone by the wayside though. They're not really, they don't really pay off now, I don't think. Crafts markets. You spend a lot of time making the stuff, loading them up, bringing them there, setting everything out. And there's no guarantee you're going to make anything because there's probably been, you might say there's been a kind of an economic downturn for the last while. And these markets are usually, it's a discretionary spend at a market, and people don't really spend money at markets if they haven't got the spare money to do it. But interestingly as well, the alternative market, when I started there, which was 6 years ago, there was a lot of people my age and our age that used to go there that would have been rockers or what have you. Now they're much older and they're not living in the city anymore. They're miles out and they don't go to them anymore. So it's a different kind of people. So I don't know. So I kind of don't do markets anymore. I just do Etsy. But I have an issue now because I have a workshop in Skerries, and I have a studio in Skerries, and the workshop is full of all this stuff that I bought from auctions in England. Absolutely just packed to the ceiling. And the woman who owns the thing, she made this remark that she's going to be selling shortly, which she didn't say when. So now I'm faced with the prospect of having to either get rid of all of this stuff or move it. Either way, it's a nightmare. So if anybody's listening and if they have a premises, I could use a stables or something like that, I'm going to have to scale it down a little bit because there's a lot of stuff there, and there's some of the stuff I'm selling, and some of the stuff isn't selling. And the big concrete items, they don't sell this time of the year anyway. But I want to kind of scale down a little bit, So yeah, I'll be certainly within the next 6 months, I'll probably have to start looking for somewhere else. But yeah, it's been good.
Hopefully you find somewhere.
Never know.
Thanks very much, Derek, for sharing all of that.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking me.
And well done on 7 years.
Has it been 7 years? Oh yeah. I thought I was talking for 7 years.
And you're going out to Malta soon.
Oh yeah.
Back to the haunt.
Back to the rock, as they say. Back to the island.
Back to the rock.
Yeah. There's a good pub there. But the local beers there are very nice. Chisk non-alcoholic, and when I was
going to ask, do they do an all?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, but it's expensive But when I was holidaying in Romania, I've been there a good few times. They have a fantastic range of non-alcoholic beers.
Really?
Yeah, in cans, and it's lovely stuff. It's not like the piss you get over here.
It's become like I drink Guinness, and it just becomes so normal drinking 0.0. You can't taste the difference now. You just get none of the buzz.
There you go. Yeah,
You can't taste
you
the
can't.
difference.
And as long as that stuff is cold, it's good
Yeah.
to drink. But like, you're not going to sit there and drink 10 cans of it.
No.
No.
Oh no! Even I was out with a friend and we had two, and then will we have another one? It's like, no, that's enough.
Yeah, I think though now it's become more accepted then for people to go to a pub in Ireland and not drink alcoholic beer.
Oh,
That place in
totally.
Skerries now is selling.
They'll sell more 0.0 sometimes than they will actually
Yeah,
alcohol.
because now you don't need to leave your car at home. You can bring the car, and that's a great freedom. By the way, that's something that non-drinking brings to you. You don't have to worry about getting a taxi home.
I know certainly when Roisin was 14, 15, 16, I was constantly on the road picking her up. You could never switch off because you could get a phone call at whatever time, come pick me up. And because of where we live, there's no access to transport. So it would have to be. So, and that's where I took up painting. I was like, well, I have to find something to keep me sane living here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And got in the habit of going to pubs and not drink.
Yeah.
You know, even though everybody else was drinking. But like you said earlier, you'd hit a point at 11 or 12 o'clock, you were like, that's it.
Yeah, and you feel tired as well. I mean, booze will keep you going.
Yeah.
You know, you could keep going through the tiredness, and that's why people feel terrible the next day. It's because they've stayed up way past
It's the hours.
their sell-by date, and they've been in and out of the pub the whole time. That was something I always remembered when I was drinking, was that I would be pissing. I mean, you'd have 3 pints and no problem. And then once you go to the toilet, you're pissing every 5 minutes. You know, constantly going backwards and forwards. And I've been on dates with people actually, and they says, you're on coke. I was going, what?
Oh, because you're going to the toilet.
Because you're going
so
to the
often.
toilet all the time. They think you're in there nipping coke. And I was, no, honestly, I must have a bladder the size of a walnut.
Nothing
I just
to do
need
with your overconfidence.
It's just to do with the fact that I need to pee all the time, you know, and it's just, yeah, but like, that was the thing as well, that booze just dehydrates the hell out of you because it's just peeing all the goodness out of you. But yeah, so I hope you do well in your new endeavour, which is podcasting now, I think.
Oh yes, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. All
podcasting
righty.
world.
Well,
I think if you had it set up, it would certainly be easier, wouldn't it, than microphones on stands with socks in your front room with all the blankets around. It looks like
yeah, for sure.
it looks like a, I don't know.
It looks like a hippie den
It
from
looks
the
like a
1970s,
hippie den,
or
yeah.
a smack den. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
or a
it's-
bed sit from Notting Hill.
It's I have to get a video of it. Actually, it's quite collective. I'm going to get a video of this now. Of all the blankets. Oh. Derek, my star, looking at his watch. Blankets, blankets, blankets. Look at that shape. Curtains, dogs, and the dog was great.
There was more farting done by the
Oh,
humans.
I never recorded that. Go again.
You dumbass.
Blankets, blankets. My guest today, Captain Birdseye, the sock, body, mind, soul. Blankets, blankets. Who needs soundproofing? Blankets and a dag. Right, thanks, Derek.